A seismic shift here, a new dawn for Syria, and the geopolitical implications are also enormous as well, whether it's Iran, Russia, or the United States.
Yeah, it's enormous, first of all, for the Syrian people. Those scenes of ecstasy on the streets of Syria tell you everything you need to know. We're seeing inside Bashar Al-Assad's homes, his office, see a picture of his father smashed on the floor, the end of his regime and the end of more than a decade of blood, hundreds of thousands killed as he determinedly gripped onto power despite efforts to try and have some kind of a transition. So there's that piece. But as you say, the geopolitical piece is huge. For the Russians, Russian media saying that he is now in Moscow. The Russians have a port, Tartus, in Syria. They also have a military base, so they have important strategic interests there. They are saying that they think that those positions are safe at this stage, but the rebel group that led this, HTS, we don't know very much about exactly what they want to do now. The Iranians, of course, effectively Syria was a proxy for Iran. It will no longer be. So for Iran, this kind of axis of resistance that it has built appears to be crumbling after Hezbollah, too, lost most of its leaders in that battle with Israel. It goes on and on. The US has a base in Syria, Al-Tanf. What happens to those troops? 900 US troops there in Syria with the Kurds. What happens to the Kurds? I mean, there are questions after questions after questions. I spoke to the leader of the Syrian official opposition over the weekend. He's talking about a transitional council to replace the government, keeping the government mechanisms in place, saying that every country, Turkey even, every country should remove its troops from Syria in the next 18 months to 2 years. So again, just underscores just how seismic this is geopolitically. But we just don't know. There are so many factions. And this is a country that's been so divided, of course, through the civil war. We don't know what we're going to end up with.
Indeed, so many questions, as you say, Keir, and of course it ultimately all raises the question about what type of influence we're going to see inside Syria moving forward. As you say, Israel severely weakening Hezbollah, that was a key backer of the Assad regime. At the same time, Russia also preoccupied with the war in Ukraine. It means its own backing of Syria and this regime is in question moving forward. And of course, the impact of the United States here is also a key question as well. President-elect Donald Trump has said that the US is going to take somewhat of a hands-off approach here. He says this is not America's fight. So what should we expect in terms of US influence moving forward? And will the United States ultimately end up pulling troops out of Syria as a result?
Well, Dan, President-elect Trump was elected on a platform of non-intervention in the world, effectively, combined with America First power. So that's the likely strategy, because that's what his voters voted for. The question, of course, is with world events, America gets pulled into these things. When things are moving so quickly, President-elect Trump won't be president until after the 20th of January. But will he remove those troops from Syria? The role they have played has been to tackle the potential threat of a rise of ISIS again. Just over the last 24 hours, we've seen further strikes on ISIS positions in Syria, clearly intended to try to stop ISIS from taking advantage of that situation. But the role of those US troops in the region too has been to prevent Iran, or to try to prevent Iran from supplying Hezbollah in Lebanon. Of course, so much has shifted. So it's possible to imagine a Trump administration saying we don't need those troops there anymore. But again, just think about the Kurds, who are US partners. They are, when I speak to them, they insist that the support of America is absolutely crucial. So it's a very complex picture. It's very difficult to predict right now where we'll be by the time we get to 2025 and President Trump is president.
Indeed, and deep implications for Israel, deep implications for Turkey as well. Your reporting has really highlighted this over the last few months, Keir.